Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. There's also one button on every car that, despite being really close to buttons you have to touch all the time, if push gets you fired immediately. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Those who have worked at Disney World, what behind-the-scenes stories do you have that the public doesn't see? Number 1. If you hear an announcement over the park-wide sound system looking for a specific person, it is something very important. Announcements like that have a chain of approval before Disney will allow the magic illusion to be broken. But it's not always bad news, like informing families of a death. I've done several park announcements to find someone to inform them an organ donation was matched, a medical courier was on their way to Orlando, and they needed to get to the hospital ASAP. Number 2. Not an employee, but I have an interesting story about Disney. When I was 7, I went to Disney World. The third night we were there, I rolled out of my bed and cut my forehead on the nightstand. My mom came over to comfort me, not knowing I was bleeding quite profusely. She turned the light on when I wouldn't stop crying. She said it looked like a murder had taken place. Paramedics were called and the room was swarming with what I can only assume were Disney employees. After I was evaluated and patched up, I was taken to the gift shop around 2 a.m. with my mom and an employee. I got to choose 3 toys at no cost to my family. It was pretty incredible to be in the completely abandoned gift shop and being told I could have anything. When we returned back to the room 25 minutes later, all the blood was cleaned up, guardrails were put on my bed, and a large basket of candy and other sweets were left on a table. Disney doesn't play around with customer service. Number 3. My customer service story isn't as gruesome, but last time I went to Disney I was around 7 years old and brought my favorite stuffed animal, a lamb named Lammy. We went out to the pool and when we got back, housekeeping had perched Lammy on the edge of the bed, made more lambs out of towels, and turned on the television to some older Disney cartoon featuring sheep. It was the most unexpected and magical thing, and I didn't even have to break my head open. Customer service is for real at Disney. Number 4. I worked on the Great Movie Ride in Hollywood Studies for a while, and I can tell you all 22 minutes of your friendly tour guide's speech is scripted to the very last letter. You get 3 days to learn your whole monologue, and all of the speed/controls/stop/goes of the actual ride, before going live as a tour guide. Most of those 3 days is spent in a room with your trainer reciting your script until you get every word right. If you accidentally say the word okay instead of all right, you start over from the beginning. Most tedious 3 days of my life. There's also one button on every car that, despite being really close to buttons you have to touch all the time, if push gets you fired immediately. Number 5. Disney security listens to all Disney radio channels at all times for any distress call, or other issue that is relevant to security. My friend, we'll call him Daniel, because that's his name, worked for Disney World in Florida once. He worked in one of the resorts. I'm not quite sure what his job actually was, but his radio call sign was Movie Runner. He was walking between resorts one night, and near a pool he was cornered by a mama bobcat. Usually not a huge deal because the bobcat will eventually realize the person is not a threat, but he radioed the resort to let them know that he was being cornered by a bobcat. Next radio transmission, without missing a beat: Movie Runner, this is Disney Security Base, we understand you are being cornered by a bobcat. Please remain calm, we have 2 units approaching your location, ETA 2 minutes, please acknowledge, over. Disney doesn't F around with bobcats. Number 6. Disney doesn't F around with safety. The office I used to work at had a water cooler so we could all fill up our bottles before we went on stage. One of my managers says at one point that the water tastes a little stale, and maybe he forgot to wash out his bottle the night before. But he keeps drinking anyway. Cut to an hour or 2 later and one of my coworkers walks in, takes a sip of water, and spit takes all over the room. Turns out one of those giant bullfrogs had gotten into the tank of the water cooler and died in there. My manager flips out and starts dry heaving. In the meantime, men in full-on hazmat suits show up and carry the water cooler away. We had a shiny new water cooler the next morning. We also had a cast member trip over a tree root in a backstage area, and there was an Alpha unit, ambulance, there in 3 minutes, and landscaping was there in 4. Number 7. I was an intern in a few of the engineering departments at the WDW resorts. I bounced around areas like park operations, warehouse operations, as well as engineering design. Nothing too crazy in my past experience, but some cool things I recall. The tunnels under the Magic Kingdom stink like trash and old food. There's a room in the tunnels where teams of people literally sit and watch attractions, restaurants, and crowded areas. They help support operations with things like estimating wait times, but also act as an overwatch for any other important information. While working in that room, we definitely poked fun at the tourists getting caught in the rain, especially the ones on Tom Sawyer's Island. Since you can only get on/off by using a raft that would shut down during storms, large groups of people would get stuck on the island getting drenched. I was always dressed in a business casual attire. If I was out in the park collecting data or something, guests would assume that I was important since I was dressed up. Most of the time I was approached to get yelled at for waiting too long in lines. None of the control systems for the attractions are accessible remotely, or via LAN, for security reasons. None of the attraction music turns off at night. It's real dark and creepy once everyone leaves the park. Number 8. I am a former Disney World Resort employee. I worked as a concierge at a deluxe resort but sometimes had shifts at a value/moderate level resort. I came across a lot of famous and crazy people. Government officials, including POTUS, normally stay at the Contemporary because it is the most secure resort. Celebrities want to stay in Cinderella's castle, but Disney has denied some of them based on how messy they have left hotel rooms before. Cast members see lots of famous people every day, all the time bragging about who you know. To try to get free stuff from people getting paid minimum wage won't get you too far. On the flip side, Disney gives out a lot of money. If you complain enough to the right cast member at your resort, especially when staying at a deluxe resort, there is a good chance you will get money back. Disney has a huge budget for this. When the Polynesian was under major construction, just coming off this now, they gave out a lot of money to angry guests who didn't do research ahead of time. If you are nice to the cast members, they will go out of their way to make magic. I often sent up chocolates or gave extra fast passes to nice guests. If you are mean to cast members, you better believe we are putting notes on your reservation. Disney has a lot of computer systems and they track crazy guests' behavior. When you come up to the desk and scan your magic band, I will be warned if you have yelled or been out of line to another cast member. And that is across the board. All the Disney resorts use the same system. As for craziest stories, I have been asked where to get drugs, where to go to get prostitutes, and I also had a guest that ended up being a con woman. I have also had guests pass me their phone number. I can only imagine how bad it is for the princesses. You definitely learn a lot about people and grow thick skin working for Disney. I think that experience helped me get my current job, but also allowed me to have newfound respect in what may be the most difficult customer service industry around. Number 9. I went there with my dad, who was working for a radio station at the time. Disney was opening a new ride and doing the press rollout, and invited the radio station there, so I guess you could think of him as a temporary employee. One of the crew spilled soda on a mic, and asked the Disney guy helping the crew where he could look for a replacement locally. He assumed Disney would have spare mics, but he was worried about getting the random special snowflake of a microphone the DJ insisted on. The Disney guy just laughed and took him to the underworld. They had rooms full of TV/radio equipment new in the box. They have spares from every brand conceivable, by the dozen. Millions and millions of dollars worth of it, just sitting there collecting dust most of the time, just in case. When Disney wants to be prepared, they don't F around. Number 10. My first day as a CP, college program intern, working at the Magic Kingdom in January 2005. After all the tours and fun stuff and exploring the tunnels, I had a meal at the Musketeria cafeteria, and had my eye on Cinderella, and some other princess, maybe Snow White, while I ate. They were mad. After the meal, I went out to wait for the bus back to the parking lot around the same time they left. Now keep in mind, characters aren't allowed to keep their costumes on as soon as they're off stage, so the princesses typically walk around in tank tops and short pajama shorts, but with wig and full makeup. So I'm waiting for the bus, and Cinderella and Snow White are full on shit talking some slut who slept with one of their boyfriends while chain smoking. Turns out, they were talking about a girl who played Ariel. Seriously? 21-year-old me was in total shock because it was my first day and knew it could only get better from there. And it did. Like the time Aladdin and Peter Pan were making out on one of the tables in the same Mouseketeer. Or the time I saw Mickey Mouse give someone the finger underground directly after a parade. It's hot in those costumes, she was probably justified. Or the time a different Cinderella got really pissed because Paris Hilton was visiting the park that day and didn't go to see her. On the bus back to the lot, she was like, "I'm FING Cinderella. Why wouldn't she come find me?" Oh man, good times, good times. Number 11. I am not an employee, but this is a customer service story. When I was about 9, my grandfather died, who had a Disney pass with some type of credit and such on it, but we went down to Disney on a trip and we were intending to move them off his card and onto my parents' cards. Well, this was still a sad time for me, as me and my grandfather were really close, so I went outside while they dealt with all the stuff. While I was out there was a security guard playing with toys and entertaining kids that were in the same position I was, with the parents being inside and not wanting to be in there. But he saw me being rather down and sad about everything and came over to me, asked what was wrong, and as I explained, he became visibly sad as well. He told me that his grandfather had died a few years back and they were close as well. He gave me a few pins that were like the special ones with the little silver Mickey head on them, and said he would get my family into the special area in Epcot to watch the fireworks. Which he did, and it completely made the trip for my family. I still have those pins because they are one of the coolest things I've ever gotten from someone.
Number 12.
I don't work there, but had a relevant experience. The stories about underground passageways and secret police are 100% true. Was in the Magic Kingdom for a band trip in high school, hanging out with a few friends. One guy, we'll call him Jack, decided it'd be a good idea to shoplift some keychains from one of the stores. This being Disney, there were probably 50 different security cameras that saw this. A few minutes later, we're walking through a crowded area when someone gave me a flat tire and we stopped. Two big guys are behind us and quietly tell Jack that he needs to go with them, and tell the rest of us to let our band director know he needs to get in touch with security. They walk Jack over behind one of the stores where there's a cast members only door, and disappear behind it. Later, Jack told us they took him underground, where he sat in a security room for the rest of the day, where he was charged with shoplifting. They threw the book at him. They don't tolerate that shit at all. He got a huge fine and had to do community service in Florida. We lived in the Northeast. In retrospect, I have a huge amount of respect, and a small amount of terror, for how Disney handled the situation. They were incredibly subtle with the whole flat tire thing, and how they quietly avoided making a scene. People walking past us had no idea what was going on. I know it sounds silly, but that experience alone probably helped me understand how terrifying and effective secret police in places like the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany were, better than anything we ever learned in class. Edits. A flat tire is when someone steps on the back of your shoe so your foot pops out and you have to stop. Through the book at him means to charge to the fullest extent of the law book. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.